Hello and welcome to Curtis Stage Tutorials. This tutorial is part 2 of CSS3 Flexbox layout. So you'll remember from the first tutorial we had created a Flexbox HTML document, and we had gotten so far as to put all the HTML code in there and get that ready. And then we made the CSS document as well and connected it to the Flexbox layout, but we hadn't done anything in it yet. So part 2 of this tutorial is going in and now starting the CSS, so let's get started. So the very first thing we want to do is remember back in our source code in the HTML we had created a Flexbox class. So let's make that first. Let's just get that out of the way first and make this happen here. So what I want to do is a class starts with a period. So I'm going to call this Flexbox. It has to be named exactly the same as what you named it back here. So whatever this is named back here, this has to be named exactly the same way. I'm going to do the curly brackets, open and close. I like to get those out of the way right at the start. And the Flexbox is done with the display selector. So I'm going to say display or this display property. So I'm going to do display and then box. And that would be it, except for CSS3 standard hasn't really been accepted yet on all browsers. I'd say fairly soon. If you're watching this video in 2011, 2012, then this we'll have to add to the code. But after 2012, most likely it'll just be display : Flexbox actually instead of box. So they're gonna change the name of it in the CSS3 standards. So for now, we have to put display : and we have to do for Mozilla and for WebKit. So this would cover our browsers for Firefox, Chrome, and Safari. And so I'm going to do Moz and then box and semicolon. And the same thing then for the next one. So display : dash and then WebKit and dash and then box and then semicolon. And so we're going to come back to this Flexbox and put some more stuff in it probably. Let's do, though, right before we do anything else, let's do a text align. So when all this text will be aligned to the left right off the bat, so it doesn't kind of look weird. And so that's our first CSS code that's connected. Nothing really is going to change over in Design View yet. Let's start now making our main, our header, and our footer. So I'll start off with header, since that's at the top. Now header, back in the old days, before HTML5, this header would either be an ID or a class. So it is a div, but now it's native to HTML5. So I don't have to put a period or a number sign in front of the word header now. All I have to do is write in header, and it now knows what we've got here. And we're going to now let's put in some, kind of in here, we'll put in a background color, but I don't want this page to shrink any smaller than 640 or, just a number that's maybe tablet size. So I'm going to put a minimum width here. So min dash width, and I'm going to say 640 pixels, semicolon. Let's give it a background color too while we're here, just kind of so we can see it a little bit better. And just pick any color. I'm going to go green and semicolon. So then when we do that, we can see that we've got now a background header or background color to our header. And if I test this in live view, it's going to go all the way across the screen. So it's expanding to fit the browser window. Of course, that's only in live view or testing on the browser. If I go back to design view, it's not going to do that. All right, let's go back to our code. Let's now just get our footer out of the way. I'm going to just copy this and paste it and just to kind of make this go faster and put the footer and get that done. And we'll make it the same exact size and color. It's totally fine. It's for speed purposes here. So now let's go back to our code. And let's now create our main box. Now this one was a class that we had or an ID. We made this a div ID called main. So this one we do have to have a number sign in front of it. So number sign main, and curly bracket facing to the left, and curly bracket to close it to the right, and then giving me some white space in here. So now I can start typing some stuff within the main. Well, the main isn't going to be much either. I'm just going to basically have a minimum width and a background color for that as well. So I'll just copy and paste that in. And I'll change the background color so it's not, so everything doesn't look the same. Let's do a lighter color, maybe like a yellow in here, or a light yellow, and semicolon. And so now you can see over in design view, and of course if I go to live view, it looks kind of boxy now. Some wacky stuff is happening over the right. We're going to fix that with our Flexbox, but so far so good. All right, I'm going to go back out of live view. All right, so after main, let's work on our 3 divs, box 1, box 2, and box 3. So I'm gonna, these are number signs, starting them. So box, or hashtag, so box-1, it has to be named exactly what we named it back over in the HTML code. And then in here, I'm gonna start by doing, well, first of all, I wanna have a minimum width on these. On a couple of these. So box 1, I'm going to do a minimum width, so it can't get any smaller than a certain size. So I'm going to say min-width, width, and colon. And so on this one, probably 100 and, let's say 80 px, and semicolon. And then I'm going to hit return. And then after the minimum width, let's make the height auto so that it expands with whatever's in it. And it probably would do that anyway, but my spelling is, so height auto. And then hit return, and we're going to do, now what we're going to do next is we're going to make these boxes go vertical instead of horizontal. And in the Flexbox model, this is called box orient. So we're going to orient these boxes vertically. It would look like this. It's going to say box-orient. So the orientation of box, essentially. And I'm going to say vertical. Okay, so box orient. But of course, we know that we're going to need to have the Mozilla and WebKit on this. So I'm just going to copy this, Command-C, and put those in there. So I'm going to, and then just do it twice. So we have to have these for now still. So I know it's kind of a pain in the butt, but we got to do it. Otherwise it won't show up. And then I'm going to go here, and for the next one I'm going to do WebKit dash. So there we go. So we've got, those are now going to line up vertically for this box number 1. Okay, so after that, we'll come back and add some more to this. Let's do box number 2 exactly the same. So let's kind of get these kind of set up. And oh, by the way, let's do a background color for this, just so we can start seeing the box itself. So background and then color. And of course, I could put an image back here, whatever. So let me make this background color maybe baby blue. Doesn't matter what color it is. And then I'm going to see that box turn baby blue. So good. Now I'm going to copy this and paste it, and we'll do the same thing for box number 2. So box-2, and for box-2 I'm going to just keep it for right now the same exact as up top, except I'll change the color on box number 2 so that it's something else. That would be, just so we can kind of see the difference here. And then this maybe be a pink, and now we've got box 2. And box 3 will maybe be the same thing. Maybe we'll just change it a tad. So let's copy and paste this. So now we'll go down here to box 3. Got to change the name here, otherwise it won't work. And maybe this box 3, which is the little nav bar, right? It doesn't need to be 180 pixels. Maybe this is 120. And we'll change the color to this as well. So I'll go back here and get a, I don't know, bright yellow, probably not a good idea there. But anyways, and so now what we've got in live view is we're gonna see our boxes kind of lining up here, creating themselves, and then oh, this is happening. So that's not so hot yet. So we'll get there. Okay, so let's go back to code view. And I'm going to get out of live view. In fact, I'll go to split view so you can kind of see some stuff. Okay, so now once we've got these, this is the basics to kind of get this going here. Now we can go add a little bit more to each one of these items. So for box number 1, let's go up, and I know we made the minimum width on box number 1 180. We can also give it a specific width on it. So we can say we want, well, let's look at this in a browser. Hold on one sec. Let's go to Safari and save these pages and see what it looks like in a browser. So it's kind of doing some weird stuff. Those are kind of off to the side. And again, in the old days, which not too long ago, we'd have to float those. Well, they're floated to get horizontal, but you'll notice they're naturally horizontal. And look, I can close this browser down, and my content within it is shrinking within box 1. But let's kind of change this just a little bit and go back into our box 1, and let's give it, for this one, let's give it a width and a height. So how about we do that? So instead of a minimum width for box 1, which is our content box, let's give it a width. And we can go around and fool around with these a little bit more. So I'm going to say no minimum width on this. Let's say a width of, how about 100 pixels? Let's try that. So as soon as I do that and I go to live view, now you can see that this box, and we're just putting this amount in so we can kind of see what sizes we can do here. So I'm going to say width of 100. How about, that's a little too small, obviously. I'm going to say, how about 300? And then when I refresh this, so click off and back on, now we can see that box 1 has that width there of 300. If I kept this minimum width here and made it, the minimum width on it would be, let's say if I made it 300 and then px and then made the width on it here 400. So the width is, okay, so then in box 2, let's give it a smaller one. So again, we're just kind of, if I go to design view, I can see that I'm just kind of creating sizes for these so we can see what they do. If I go on here and I say I want a width of box number 2 of 180, then it's specifically now that size, box number 2, 180 for the sidebar. And if I go to box number 3 and give it a width of, let's say, 120 instead of a minimum width, then it'll be the exact size that I want it to be, let's say. Okay, the flexibility is going to happen in a second with this content box, the main box in the middle. But these two boxes, you can see I can give them specific sizes, and however my browser is going to be. Now you can see which one's flexible right now. The main box is definitely kind of going to the size and the header and the footer, and these boxes in the middle are not actually flexible right now because we gave them a specific height or a specific width. Okay, so we'll come back to those in a second in terms of the height and width. Let's go do and add a little bit more of Flexbox to these, a little bit more in the Flexbox area. So we've made them vertical. We've oriented them vertically. Now what we want to do is we want to be able to change their order of which ones these go into. Now Flexbox 1, first off, I want to give that one, there's this thing we can do in here where we can say, I want one of these boxes to be the dominant box that's kind of in the middle. And that's the one that's going to be the one that is going to expand with our flex. So I'm going to say box flex on this, and I'm going to give it a number of 1. And there's no px here, and then semicolon. And again, I would have to do the same thing that we did up here. I'd have to give it the Mozilla and WebKit. And you'll see what this does here in a second. And then I'm going to give this the dash MOZ dash, and then the dash WebKit dash. And if I'm in split view, I'm not really seeing anything yet, but we'll see it in a minute. And then I'm going to go, and now we're going to add the same thing to all 3 of these. We're not going to do the box flex, but we're going to add an ordinal group. which means that I can change the order of these no matter what order I put them in the code over here in the source code. So in the source code, I made box 1 first, but what's cool about the Flexbox is I can change the order of this just in CSS, and that's called the box ordinal group. So I'm going to change that. I want actually box 1 to be in the center, and you can see how now this, because I put this box flex -1 right here, you can see that the width here doesn't matter now. And I'll explain this in a second. I'm going to actually can just take this off here and just give it back to a minimum width, but I wanted to put that there. It's just this thing overrides the width of box number 1 now. Look at it in design view with live view turned on. See my blue box 1, how it's expanding? I'll explain that more in a second. So what I want to do is I want to change the order of it though. I want the blue one now, box 1, content box 1, to go in the middle. So it's called the box ordinal group. So I'm going to do that next. So I'm going to go here to, again, it'd be the same thing. I would just do box and then ordinal group. So ordinal and then dash group. I really like this one. This one's cool because you don't have to go back into your HTML code and change things. You can just like, oh, I want this box to move over here. I want this to go over there. So I want the order of this. This one's going to be the number 2 box now in the order. So that's how I'm getting these to move around now. It's pretty cool. So now I'm going to go down here, and of course I got to add on the Mozilla and WebKit. And so I'm just copying this twice, and then I'm going to add on the dash MOZ dash, and then add on the dash WebKit dash, and then we've got that. Now if I go to design view, now it doesn't know it doesn't know which order yet. We put a 2 on here, but these 2 don't know what to do yet. So they just slid over and said, oh, this guy's kind of doing something weird. We're going to go ahead of it. So almost kind of like a floating situation. But we're gonna fix these. We're gonna make the nav be box number 1 and the sidebar be box number 2 here, or box number 3. So let's do that. So I'm just gonna copy this box ordinal group to the other 2. So I'm gonna go here, copy that there, and I want box number 2. Let's see which one box number 2 is. I want that to be box 1 in the group. So I want that to be in order number 1. I know it's confusing, but I'm showing this because I want you to see that you can change the setup in these of where they are. And then let me do the same thing down here. Let's flip the order here for the other one. And this one, box number 3, which is our nav, our yellow nav area, let's make it in the ordinal group. Let's make it 3. Let's push it over to the 3rd side. So that one's in the spot that we actually want it to go. So really the only 2 that are changing were box 1 and 2. Now if I click out of live view and back into it, you can see that we've now got our order. Now what's happening here in the middle, watch when I take my browser and I pull it open and close. Pretty cool, it's now flexing to the main. So the parent that this is in is flexing here. These 3 boxes are now sizing automatically, and the middle one, the middle column, is sizing according to the parent size. So it's making up for the width. We're telling this by going here to code view. The one that we put on that was key to this was this, the box flex. This group right here, on to number 1. We're basically saying you better fill in the gap. If we don't have this here, watch, I'm going to delete this. So I'm just going to do Command X and delete and go back to design view. Remember we put a width of 400 on it? And this is, I put this there just so we can kind of see. If I go back to design view, look what happens. This area over here in the main, we can see its background color, which was that kind of yellow color, this like off yellow color. This content box is now 400 pixels wide. And we've got no flexing on those middle columns. So kind of stinks here, and what happens is then to make up for the space, this is going to expand. Well, so now I've got this option by putting that back in, and Command Z, and now no matter what my width was, and I'll go to split view, so just because my width on box number 1 was 400, doesn't matter. Now, here's where the minimum width comes in handy. So I'll put that minimum width back on here and say, now the minimum width to this main content box 1, I'm going to make back to our first original one, maybe 180. And now when I go to live view, that box can never get smaller than 180. In fact, I'm just going to preview this on Safari here. And now what's going to happen, let me refresh this because Safari's not seeing it right. So now, yes, it's expanding, but check it out. It won't go any farther. Look, it stops at 400 pixels, that content, or 180, excuse me. The blue box now will stop at 180. It won't get any smaller. This is really good for when we're on tablets. Now I can make each one of these two other sides do the same thing if I want to. I can make them stop, of course, at that size as well, or at a certain size. Well, they already are. We set a width to them. So let me go back and take off that. Let's go back over here. I'm going to pull this over to the side so we can see it. We put on the fixed width here, but now if I put the fixed width of minimum dash on box number 2, now it's minimum width. If I go to live view, again, it's going to be the size of the browser. Let's go here, click save, and refresh this. It's going to be whatever the size of the browser is. And so, but its minimum would be 180. You can see now it's trying to fill up the whole space here, and it's filling up the parent it's filling the parent. The child is getting in there and filling that. It's kind of a pain in the butt here. This one. So I want the minimum width, but maybe I want that box flex on there to be number 2 in the group. So number 1 was my main one. I want that one to be the biggest one. So if I go to box number 2 and I copy that and say I want this to be number 2 in the order in terms of the flexing, then if I put that there and I click off live view and back on, now we're going to get a better situation here. Now we're going to say box number 1, let me refresh this in Safari. Now we're going to say, okay, look at how it's doing it now. It will expand. It's saying content box 1, we told that to be the primary one that flexes. Box number 2 is the secondary one that flexes, so it'll get bigger to fill the space as well. So see that? But its minimum width can't go, it's going to be small, 180 is the smallest. So that's nice. So when I close this down, 180 is the smallest. So we just left box 3 where it is. And I can do all the things that we do in regular CSS, putting the padding, putting the margin, all that stuff I can do within this now after it. I can put images in here and the whole thing. So this model works really cool because it gives you a columned layout without having to use floats, and we can really go in and manage actually the sizes of these boxes and get them exactly the way they want them, and they'll all flow together, and we're getting closer to more fluid design here, flexible layout design that will work on multiple devices like handhelds and tablets. And this of course is more for the browser and for maybe a tablet size, and not really for handheld. We'd have to make this even go smaller for the handheld. The minimum widths would have to get way down there for the handheld devices. But you can see that this is a step in the right direction towards designing sites that will fit multiple browsers. All right, so that's it for our Flexbox Part 2 tutorial. Hope to see you soon.